Geraldine Pitschke, and welcome to Aging Well in Georgina. On the show today, we're going to be talking about caregiving. You know, there's an estimated 8 million Canadians who play a caregiving role in their family. That's a lot of people providing an amazing care service, and we don't really hear a lot about it. My guests today know a lot about caregiving from a personal and a professional perspective. So I'd like to introduce you to Mary Margaret Thornburg. Mary Margaret is a volunteer with Hospice Georgina, and Andrea LaRocque, who is a counselor with CHATS. So welcome to the show today, and thank you for joining me.
Thanks.
Hi there.
Hi. Mary Margaret, you have actually personal experience as a caregiver, taking care of your brother. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about that and how that started?
Yes, my brother's presently 92, and about 7 years ago, he decided to sell his house and move into the retirement wing of Cedarvale Lodge. And things were going along really well. And I'll have to say, one of his greatest fears, I know I'm biased, but I think he's brilliant. He's installed all of the original microwaves across Northern Ontario and installed the microwaves at the top of the CN Tower. And his biggest fear was that he would end up getting Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. So it was not a subject that we hadn't discussed, but it came up quite frequently that he was forgetting things. So we went and had a chat with his GP, who arranged an assessment at the geriatric unit down at South Lake Hospital. And after that, things went kind of quickly. But I had shared with the doctor that he was terrified of Alzheimer's. So the diagnosis that they gave him was mild cognitive impairment. We've never used the term Alzheimer's, and in speaking with other people, I think there's a fair bit of avoidance of the term. I don't know if you agree with that, Andrea. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Definitely, there is a stigma around Alzheimer's.
Yeah. So after that, I had seen a course for caregivers. And I think that's given through South Lake, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Andrea? The caregivers course?
Yes, it's through the South Lake self-management program.
Okay. So after I finished that, I became aware of a caregiver support group that was actually running it at hospice. So I joined that, and I think that's been a really probably the most beneficial thing I've done for myself. And I think you'll hear from me and from Andrea, one of the big things that's missing that people don't think about is self-care. And that's, I guess, where my self-care and my awareness of how important that is came up through the caregiver support group. So we're going along, and he's doing well. He was lucky enough to be put on a medication that doesn't reverse things, but kind of slows the process, and it appears to be working with him. So that's a blessing.
Yeah. You know, there are so many people, as I said in the beginning, 8 million people caregiving, playing that role for their family, which is really amazing. And I know that it's for, anybody who has a disability, or especially around aging, right? A lot of things coming up as we age. You're doing that job, Mary Margaret, and it's wonderful that you're taking care of your brother. You must have you must have learned a lot about yourself while you were doing that, while you're taking care. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the things that you might have discovered about yourself?
I guess the first thing that I may have discovered was that I could possibly be labeled a slow learner. It's good to hear other people in the chat groups or support groups pointing out things. The big revelation that I had when I took the course was the fact that I was a caregiver. I never saw myself that way. He was my brother. I was just doing things that family does for each other. And to actually be able to put a title on what you're doing puts things in a different perspective. I think the one difficulty that I had was the assessment at the hospital was in September. By the end of October, my brother had lost his license. He was going to give it up in January when he turned 90 anyway, but this kind of forced his hand, and they were putting obstacles in front of him that weren't even worth addressing. So that was the one time that I kind of felt helpless. He was put in a position where he was being something that was valuable to him was being taken away, and there was nothing that we could do about it. So I think that was, I know different people handle that differently, but Andrea, I see you shaking your head. Do you have something to add about the independence of having a driver's license? And
definitely. It's one of those things that it's difficult to talk about with the person who is potentially losing their license.
Yeah.
But as an individual, that's one of our greatest freedoms that we don't necessarily think about all the time, is the ability to just hop in our car and go do what we need to do. And, when your license gets taken away, you're losing a part of yourself, a part of your independence and your ability to make choices and decisions. So that is a tough subject to broach. And there's all kinds of clever techniques and strategies that I've heard other caregivers use to navigate that.
When it happened with us, it was difficult to broach. I oftentimes use humor. In addition to mild cognitive impairment, my brother suffers from slight paranoia. So there are these people that are doing things to him. So one of the things that I suggested when losing his license came up was, instead of letting them take it from you, let's be in a proactive position, and we'll walk into the driver's bureau and hand in our license. And part of the draw with that was it was right when they were coming out with photo identification cards that people that don't have driver's licenses or whatever can have. And so we went in, and he voluntarily handed in his driver's license and got one of the first identification cards. So he felt like he was in control then.
And I think that that's probably very important for people to feel like in whatever area you can help them to have some control, because there must be, of course, there's all the loss. So as the caregiver, there's probably, all of a sudden you have a very big responsibility, because now you are taking care of somebody else. And of course, that entails so many pieces. So how do you deal with that loss? I mean, is it possible to be able to have a conversation? Were you able to have a conversation with your brother, Mary Margaret?
I think we kind of avoid the subject.
Okay.
But this is a really good time to bring up kind of the other hat that I wear with Hospice Georgina. And we have a client care coordinator, and we can talk a little bit about that. But we also have a grief and bereavement coordinator, and people think of that oftentimes as when somebody dies. One thing that isn't addressed very often is anticipatory grief. And that can be for me, it can be for him. And we do have someone there that is able to talk to people and address the subject. And I think that's where you start building up your team. You can't go at this alone. It's too lonely and too heavy.
Yes. And so I do want to talk about some of the supports that are available in our community. But one of the things I remember I think that you made a point earlier on that lots of times people don't see themselves as the caregiver. And so, I know when I had put out some information before, people were like, well, I'm not really a caregiver. And so it's about owning that you are a caregiver, and then you are entitled and, really need to take care of yourself, because before you know it, you can be in a situation where you're starting to experience, I think, burnout. But because you're not really feeling like you're the caregiver, first there's that owning of it. Yeah, I really do have all of this responsibility, and I really am, taking care of this person. So I do want to talk about some of the supports, because I know we have a lot of great supports available in our community. Andrea, can you tell me a little bit about just as an introduction to what you do at CHATS when it comes to caregiving?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm part of a caregiver education and support team. My role is caregiver education counselor, and I work directly with caregivers. They are my client. I'm most interested in how they're doing and how they're coping with their role as caregiver. And my job is to help connect them to supports and services within the community, to listen to them, as an outside external, third party who can provide emotional support, give them some strategies and suggestions that other caregivers have shared, but also to link them with other caregivers, like Mary Margaret mentioned, caregiver support groups. I also lead workshops and webinars and do community outreach. So I will go out in the community and do a presentation at the Seniors Center or the Legion to educate seniors on what services are available and some of the things that they may be experiencing as a senior.
It sounds like there are lots and lots of support. So it sounds like you're doing a great job at CHATS, delivering these supports for caregivers. And I think as we said, it's so important because you're just one person and you're probably trying to do everything. And then, if they connect. So we're just going to go to a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about more about the supports for caregivers. So let's go to a quick break and be right back. Hi, and welcome back to Aging Well in Georgina. Today we're talking about caregiving and caregiving supports that are available in our community. My guests are Mary Margaret Thornburg, she's a volunteer with hospice, and Andrea LaRocque, who is a counselor over at CHATS. So welcome again. I'm so happy. This is a great conversation today. So Andrea, I would like to ask you, before we went to break, we were talking about the supports for caregivers, and, from your experience, what would you say are some of the signs of burnout in a caregiver?
Well, caregivers, they express burnout in different ways, but there are some, common signs that if we all sort of sit quietly and think about, we can acknowledge when we're feeling anxious or overwhelmed. A lot of times when we do an initial assessment with the caregiver, we'll run through an assessment or a survey to kind of gauge where they're at. And so we use the scale of, green, yellow, and red. So a lot of caregivers come in around the yellow zone, which means that some of their, the components of their lives that they enjoy and they get rest from or rejuvenation from, they're sacrificing those. So they're reaching a point where they feel like their lives are being encroached on, and they're not necessarily getting the time and the energy to recharge and refuel those batteries. So it's a lot like their resilience is being tested. So some of the things that we look at, whether their social lives have been affected, whether they're no longer able to spend time and do things that they had previously really enjoyed doing. So social outings, personal activities, maybe they had a hobby or a class that they attended, or they like to go swimming. If those things are being compromised, then that could be a red flag that there are some boundaries that are being crossed and potentially the caregiver is on the road to burnout. Also, it's about how much support that they have at home. If they're doing everything on their own and they don't have any support from the community or from friends and family, then we recognize that a caregiver can only do that for so long before they start to feel the emotional and the physical symptoms of burnout. So burnout feels a lot like when we're not well. So we may feel anxious, we may feel overwhelmed, we may not be sleeping, we may not be eating properly, we have no downtime, we're starting to be a little bit resentful towards the person that we're caring for. We may find that we're irritable or short-tempered with other people in our lives, and that could be a red flag for the family that, maybe my loved one needs some backup. But then we talk about some strategies on how to bring back some of those things into the caregiver's life so that they can find a balance.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. That sounds amazing. And I know that a lot of the times, Mary Margaret, I'm sure that you experience this too, because you're feeling so responsible for the care of your loved one, then maybe you would feel guilty taking time out to take care of yourself. Like you get so caught up with it that probably happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so guilt is an interesting word. We talk a lot about that in the Powerful Tools for Caregivers workshop series that we run. Guilt is usually a word that in the English language we associate with not being able to do something for someone, or we haven't done enough for someone. And that's actually, it's a word that should be exchanged for remorse, because guilt is really an ownership or admission of even being malicious or deliberately letting someone down. That's the true meaning of guilt. But as a caregiver, we feel a lot of guilt, which is actually remorse. So remorse that we didn't spend enough time with the person, or we didn't do this the way that they wanted to do it. Our intentions are there, but we most times aren't able to do it because it's just too much for us. So we kind of challenge caregivers a little bit in that workshop series to say, is it really guilt that you're feeling, or is it another emotion that you're really struggling with?
It's very difficult to, I just remember when my children were small, it's very difficult for any of us to do our best when we're tired. When we're starting to feel that we just haven't had enough time for ourselves to be able to recharge. And we all kind of recharge in different ways. It could be going out for a walk, or it could be reading a book, or listening to some music, or just taking a break. And we do have some great supports in Georgina to help with caregivers. So the other thing that I was thinking about is that how would somebody get in touch with you if they wanted to, connect with some of the programs?
Well, I think what's going to happen is my email address is going to be shared on the show. That's certainly one way to connect with me. But if people prefer the phone, the general phone number for CHATS is, easy to access. I can either give it out now or we can give it out later. But basically, you would call the office and identify that you're a caregiver, and you would be connected with the caregiver education counselor for your area. So I represent the North York Region, South Simcoe area for CHATS. And so Georgina is part of my catchment area. So I'd be able to connect with the caregivers who are interested in finding out some more information about how we can get involved and work together.
So really easy to connect and really easy to join in one of the programs. You probably don't have a long wait list. So somebody's not calling and then feeling like, I can't, because usually people wait till the very end, don't they? Like I'm experiencing burnout now. I really need something now.
Yeah, definitely. We're not a crisis service for sure, but if a caregiver does call us and they are in crisis, we will work with them to make sure that they're connected with crisis support. The type of support that we offer is, sometimes it's a one-off. People just need information and away they go, or they're looking for some long-term, connection. So it might be a support group, or it might be weekly check-ins or monthly check-ins. We really work with the caregiver to make sure that they're getting the support that they need that fits their lifestyle.
That's, it sounds really great. It really does. It's so excellent that there are so many great supports in our community. And I know, Mary Margaret, you're a volunteer. You volunteer with Hospice Georgina, and they have a lot of supports for caregivers as well. Would you like to share some of that?
Absolutely. We have two coordinators. One we call our client care coordinator, and that would probably be the first person that you would have contact with. I think you'll have the information in terms of how to get a hold of Hospice Georgina, including it's probably the easiest to phone. And when you identify what you need, as Andrea said, we'll put you in touch with our client care coordinator. And what happens then is she will come out and meet with the caregiver and the person who's being cared for. And depending on the needs and the interests, would suggest some options. And some of the programs that we offer are coffee and chats, where you just get together with people and have conversations. It's a social group. We have a women's cancer support group. Another option is a day program. Day hospice is offered to people who can still get out of their house and like to socialize. There are activities and a lunch included. We can also do meditation, which can be either for the client or for the caregiver. We have an arts group. And there's also something run by the Alzheimer's Society called Minds in Motion. And it is for the caregiver and the client. And there are physical activities and brain stimulation activities. So that's something you can do together. So not only are there options for the person who needs help during the day. As Andrea said, sometimes we get overwhelmed and we just need time to do our hobbies or get out and socialize a little bit. So in that respect, we offer visiting volunteers. So the visiting volunteer can go into your home and spend time with your loved one, and you can go out and get a haircut or, a coffee at McDonald's. Yes. So the one thing that we like, and probably the biggest challenge for hospice, is that people think of us as a center where we talk about death. And actually what our goal is for people to start thinking of us as a center for living. We do so much so that you can live life to the fullest. Not everybody is at the point of dying. I mean, we have many, probably most of our clients who have a life-limiting illness, COPD, or are recovering from cancer, kidney disease. So we offer programs that assist you in enjoying the life that you're leading. So it's for the client and for the caregiver.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, Mary Margaret, about people, what their perception is around hospice, because it's so true. Hospice has so many other opportunities for caregivers, for seniors who are living in our community. I've actually sat in on the coffee and chat on the Monday morning with Tracy, and the group there is so friendly and so nice. And, it really is just a place for them to come and chat and talk about what they're doing through the week. And it's a really nice, it's just a break. It's just a nice break. They're all so very, very welcoming.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because on a number of occasions, we'll have somebody walk through the doors and stop and say, oh, I'm in the wrong place. And well, where did you want to go? Well, we're going to hospice. Yeah, but everybody's laughing here. Yeah, that's us.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And all the staff is very, very friendly. And Andrea, CHATS has so many great opportunities for caregivers as well, like lots and lots of supports. And I think a lot of times it's really, really good to just hear about what kind of supports they are and how simple. It's very, very easy to connect, whether it's with CHATS, whether it's with hospice. If you are a caregiver and you are, you're doing this job and it's an amazing job and we really commend you, reach out and get some, reach out, make some friends, get some support, take a break. It really is, it's necessary. I would say it's very necessary. I mean, I think we all we all do our best, but we all need to take care of ourselves.
I think
as well.
connecting makes the load feel lighter.
It definitely does. And even if you, you meet somebody and they live in the same community that you do, and maybe they don't even live very far from you, then now you know that there's somebody else in your community. And, if you only have a little bit of time, you can always arrange to go for a walk with that person and you can share. And I think it's so important for caregivers to take care of themselves. Is there anything else you'd like to share? I know we're coming to the end of our segment, but
I just wanted to really quickly just share this resource that all of our caregivers get at the Powerful Tools for Caregivers workshop series, which is run completely free and offered by Southlake and CHATS. It's an amazing handbook and resource. And we go through each topic, 6 topics in a week, each week. So if anybody's interested in learning more about that, please give me, an email or a call.
I'm sorry, I have to cut you off. We have to wrap up. We're coming to the end of our show. And I just want to say thank you so much. And again, to the viewers, thank you for joining us today. I hope this information was really interesting, as it was to me. And we'll see you all again on Aging Well in Georgina. Goodbye for now.